Where in a career arc does that become more or less important? Because certainly when you are starting out and you're learning how to mix, you're learning how to produce, it's the Neil Gaiman thing. You're not going to find your voice until you sound like a lot of other people. The instinct to copy is huge, and it's everybody. Nobody starts out mixing just in a vacuum. You're listening to mixes. You're trying. Before I met Eric Valentine, I was trying to make my drums sound like his Good Charlotte drums.
Yeah, right.
So at what point do you? And I don't know if there's a general answer, but I now remember a moment that it happened with me. But when did that start to transition from I'm being hired to do something that I need to figure out how to do versus I now do this thing well, whether you feel you have mastery or not? When did you start saying they're paying me for me to do my thing, so I'm going to start there?
Last year.
Last year.
I mean, dude, this whole live on Instagram thing is about being as honest and transparent.
Yeah, of course.
I only want to exist that way. I would say when Khalid started doing so well and, hit number 3, I was like, that's what I want music to sound like in R&B. So specifically, right, I get paid a lot. I get hired a lot to do pop R&B.
Yeah.
So in that...
Is it because of the Khalid stuff?
That's what I was doing most of the time anyway. But then when you get a hit with it, I think people start coming to you. That's what I'm saying. I can tangibly say that my year after that song that I did with Dennis Koziak, that's definitely a collaborative mix because he does everything with Khalid, and that's kind of the thing. But I definitely was able to steer it in a sonic direction that I had it envisioned in my head. And right, it was a bit of a struggle with Disclosure producing it because they're an EDM group, right? And they tightly compress everything, and my feelings on compression. I didn't use anything, so.
Did you go back and forth with them?
One pass. Guy was like, "Love this. It's definitely less compressed than mine." And then we texted. It was like, "Hey, do you want me to send back a pass with slightly more?" And I don't think I even compressed. I think I had more transient punchiness added. Whatever Dennis and I thought of was a good move. They loved. The second pass was the mastered pass for that. I think, and he was like, "Honestly, I like both of these. You guys pick." And I actually liked the second pass because I thought that whatever his feedback gave me to bring out a little bit more energy in some things. But theirs was super straight and it had very little swing to it. It wasn't R&B enough for me. It didn't have that lean back kind of groove.
Ooh, can I take a little sidebar for a second? There's a really interesting thing that and I don't want to lose your train because I want to hear more about it. This idea of getting notes and doing exactly what the note asks for versus doing notes and interpreting them to achieve the result. And that just comes from lots of experience, but the ability to translate notes from artist, A&R, manager, producer, those sort of people is a huge skill. And that seems like the perfect moment of that, where you're dealing with a Disclosure, an unbelievably talented duo that was producing a slower tempo R&B song that when you heard it, you were like, okay, their instincts on I hope you're grooving to the song right now.
I am.
Their instincts on compression fit a slightly different genre and a different sound.
Yep.
So when you sent them a mix that didn't have the same sort of compression and they said, can we try more compression? You thought what? You thought about transients. You thought about ways to achieve what you felt they were missing.
Yep.
Without just doing your version of the thing that they were doing. Yeah,
I don't think I had one compressor on that song.
That's crazy.
I don't think we did at all. Again, unless you call The Unfair Child the compressor, which I don't. Yeah. That's on the vocal, but everything's clip gained.
You obviously got lots of things with compression on them.
Yeah. Most of their stuff is mix bus reliant, so the stems didn't feel compressed. It sounded like their mix bus I didn't have, or I think we did. We had I think we remade it with an SSL compressor. I just took it all off, but I think we had theirs. I think we had it exactly the same. Best low end in R&B right there. That was the goal.
I think best low end, best transients.
That kick is so long and deep, and but so dialed, and like you can't do that with a compressor, like holding it up the whole time. You just got to let it breathe. But I'm grooving to it because in my head I'm hearing the blah 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 blah. Like their version was blah 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 blah. It felt faster. It felt like
right, because you're losing the tails on things.
Yes. So like I'm in there clip gaining down the ba 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 to kind of like get that feel to kind of sway a little bit. Without compression too, you can really dial in that bounce. And the hi-hats, if you listen subtly, there's a hi-hat in there that's doing the same swing. So that's all clip gain to kind of just groove at the same time. And if you put a compressor on it, that's an overall general processing. It's just everything gets put together, and that's not what we want out of these things. We want the hi-hat to feel a little bit more behind the synth transient, so you get all that articulation, right? So back to the original question, I think that because I could talk about that.
By the way, I want you to nerd out a little because I love that mix. That's one of my favorite things.
So that's why I'm bringing it up. You don't want to I don't want to do this in 10 years where I'm still talking about talk, right? Like, but it's
do it now, bro.
Yeah, it's still a relevant mix that stays on people's minds in R&B. So it is nice to talk about. But that was the moment where I said to myself, okay, that song won. Right? It was nominated for Record of the Year. It hit all the markers that say that's a successful song. So ego aside, just objectively, that song, oh, I love Bad Luck from that mix is my second favorite. Similar approach, by the way, on that one.
Josh got good ears.
Yeah, it's very similar kind of, I even think I swapped the kick to Bad Luck from because it just felt right. But I didn't want to get off the train of thought.
You were talking about
that song won, so I can say that's what I wanted it to sound like. Other people are recognizing it and relating to it and feeling something from it. I now know that in that genre, I can do that again, and the chances, the probability of it working is what an A&R or a manager or an artist or someone is paying me for. That the probability of success is higher, right? That's why you hire a producer that has a good track record and a mixer. It's really to have the probability being high of success, right? Yeah. So along the line, if a song doesn't work, they can't put blame on the A&Rs. Like, I hired the right pieces, like I got this done. Yeah. There's that part of it. You're not taking into consideration, like, when did you drop the record? Like, did Kanye put a record out the same day? Is there a pandemic and a lockdown happening the same day? There's so much that can happen on a day of release that can get in the way of that success. But, we hit it right. And I know a lot of it has to do with how it sounds. I think it's a very, very nostalgic feeling, but fresh perspective coming out at a time where a lot of music was really loud and overexcited. I remember Khalid coming up to listen to it, coming to the studio up here and listening down to the whole album and him being like, man, this shit sounds listenable. And I was like, what a great fucking note to get. Listenable. Because he's like, man, you got to be in the mood to listen to some shit. You can put this on and cruise to it in a car any time of the day. And I'm like, that was it. But that was exactly what, like, I don't think we met maybe once before, maybe twice before, but that was the first time I was like, we get each other, and I already knew because Dennis and his relationship is so tight because he records everything. Like, I already knew they had it, and Dennis had my trust, and I have Dennis's trust, and we had that. But that was a specific moment. I was like, this is going to work. So I know I can get hired to do that, and I feel confident in that lane all the time.
Yeah.
Or at least to put my first pass forward in that. It's kind of back to that question.
You said one thing which I wanted to pick out just on a very nerdy level.
Sorry.
What's that?
I said a lot. Sorry.
I love this. Is what this is for, man. People enjoy these things. We're getting very good feedback on these, and I think it's these sort of conversations where you just get excited about these weird little nuances.
Excited! I got caffeine in me again. Sorry,
I know. There you go. There you go. The flam with the hi hat, where the things are sort of behind on that record, and I'm just going to repeat something you said and tell me if I'm misinterpreted. But if you were to use bus compression, things like that, you lose the particular like double hit of that flam. Mm-hmm. And that flam, there's so many things about that song that are great, but that flam makes that fucking song.
Yeah.
It makes the whole thing like gushy and lean. And so when you got the rough mix, was that balance between those things different?
I can't even determine the hi-hat to synth in that, because there's so much top. And again, that's if we're getting even geekier, talking about filter, right? The synth, even the bright synth, is filtered down pretty low, 12, 15K, right? Like low, so the hi-hat can have its air above there, or you can go the opposite way and filter. You're sculpting, and again, monitoring. This is PMC at its finest. Like the amount of power that gets to the tweeter on PMC speakers. But people say, we talked about this last week, say they're bright. It's like pop music is bright, right? It's actually really authentic top end because of how much power and consistency is coming into those drivers that let you hear. I was saying last week, I can tell the difference between 11K and 12K, right? So because I know that, I'm not going to be lazy and not utilize that audibility factor. I'm filtering down so the hi-hat doesn't occupy the same space as a bright synth. When that chorus comes in, there's another version, it's so subtle, another version of the main synth that has no transient and only has reverb, right? So I'm saturating the mid-range into that so you get this subtle extra length to a very similar synth sound, right? There's very deliberate moves. We're talking about the flamming of things. It's like that was inherent in Disclosure's production. All the layers were so intentional, and they were getting a bit combined, obscured, right, by compression, by bus compression. Again, if OG Volta was on here right now, like compression works, but I think in individual ways, right? I don't believe in too much bus compression. I would,
or like we're talking about, to achieve an effect.
Yes, to achieve an effect. Like I wouldn't put all guitars, including palm mutes, full diamond chords, and a lead guitar to a guitar bus and compress it. Like, I would love for someone to. Oh, he is here. Hey guys, I would love to hear an argument of why you would want to compress the palm muting with sustained chords and a lead guitar solo in the bridge through the same bus. Like, just someone tell me why you would do this. And if there is a reason for it, maybe it's 1 in 1,000. It's like, that just felt good. Or it's like, maybe you thought it felt good. Or there's a reason why you have, you see people's console tapes back in the day. It's like rhythm guitar, lead guitar. They're not going to a guitar bus. That's the bus. That's the aux. It's the rhythm guitars. Let's glue them together. I would still argue you can do that with saturation and not necessarily having to use a compressor. But
maybe residual from the previous 15 years of loudness wars. That to get something as loud as you can for a zero CD master, the more bus compression and the more you can get away with it to just go crazy. Like it was necessary on some level to compete with the other thrashy rock band that you were.
And now it's not.
Now it's not at all.
But the flamming thing, I like thinking about it as flamming, but I also like thinking of it as separation, right? Because it's not really flamming. You're not doing a kind of drum flam. You're not. It's so subtle. It's like maybe 100 samples off from each other or 10 milliseconds off, because that's the nudge. I even think in that song, which I shouldn't talk about too much out loud, but I'm pretty sure I nudged the hi-hats back, right? Mm-hmm. I think I heard that's what it should be doing, and let the synth dictate the feel, and the hi-hats are behind, so the swing is there. Like, I think I did that. I'm hesitant to really confirm that without looking at my playlist. I would always duplicate the playlist in the session, because you never want to just move something without being able to go back.
Of course.
How'd you do that? I only moved at a thing.
Duplicate your playlist when you're doing edits, kids.
Always. Duplicate before you do anything.
Yeah. Actually, not a
save
bad
as
idea.
Before you do too much of it.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty confident that if I'm nudging something, I rarely do it. So when I do it, it's like, ooh, this is because Tony has whacked my hand with a wrist so many times for nudging shit. So
fortunately, he's not there to whack your wrist anymore. That's an interesting thing, though. That is something I've done a fair amount. I don't do a lot of pure mixing. I'm mostly producing and writing. Mm-hmm. But I've definitely done, and nudging happens for flam reasons, for phase reasons. There's lots of reasons to do that. And it sounds like to achieve the intent of what the guys in Disclosure did, to get that lean just the right way, you would, they had some effects on it that you were going to take a different approach. So it was necessary for you to make some little adjustments.
Yes.
It totally makes sense. It totally makes sense.
I think it does. You just have to be really, really careful and respectful when doing it. Yeah. I don't think you ever nudge or flip phase with utmost confidence that you're making it better every time. I think second guess, double check. It's kind of like a do not try this at home type move a lot of the times, because sometimes if someone has 4 snares and you get them all into phase, it takes a completely different snare character, right? Like if they were to send you a group stem of the snare, that's not their snare anymore. And you can maybe objectively say it sounds better now because it feels like all that body's in it. That might not be what they're going for. So
yeah, they're the creative architects.
Yeah, exactly. So when I'm doing moves like that, I'm constantly A-Bing with the rough and saying, okay, well, now that I've got it in phase, what mid-range and upper mid-range character is lost from it because now there's so much body. I get that back. Sometimes if I'm doing things fast and I'm a bit lazy, which is rare, but you got to admit sometimes that happens, they have to be like, hey, snare's got a lot of low end. Can you dip any boost you're doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing any boost. Oh, right, I flipped the phase. And they're hearing the difference. And it's not that was a bad move. It's that I didn't make up for the character loss from the smack or something from a breakbeat that I flipped against the sample.
Yeah, that totally.
Gotta be really careful. It's not something you just do because visually, it's again, you wouldn't necessarily, if you're in the key of A and you see an EQ and there's a 440 hertz boost, that's the fundamental. Just because it looks high on the Pro Q3 graphic analyzer doesn't mean you need to take that out because it's up. It's that's the fundamental. How much of that you want. Just because you visually see something's wrong doesn't mean it's wrong.
So don't use your eyes, use your ears is what.
Yeah, I think use both. I think I think analyzers are super helpful.
Yeah.
All the time, I could mix while I'm on a phone call to some degree with certain things. Again, don't try this at home.
Yeah.